up to Daf Yud Daled in Masechta Chulin, and we're continuing to learn the laws of Shchita. So the Mishnah continues. First we talked about who was qualified to shecht, and then we're talking about when you permit to shecht, if you can shecht at night. So now we're up to Daf Yud Daled and Aleph on top of the page. Okay, now before we discussed shechting at night, hashaychis b'Shabbos. If you shecht it on Shabbos itself, you're not allowed to shecht on Shabbos, or Yom Kippurim, or if you shecht on Yom Kippur. Even though shemizchai b'nafshay you did an avera which incurs skila on Shabbos and chorus on Yom Kippur, nevertheless the shechit itself is kosher. All the Rishonim wonder, because we know that if you're Mechal Shabbos, you're a Mummer. And a Mummer, L'chal Shabbos, we had before, even though we had an argument if you're a Mummer L'davar Ech, if you're a Mummer to one Aveda, can we trust the other? But everyone agrees that a Mummer L'Avodah Zorah, not everyone except the Ravana Bashmul, but everyone else says a Mummer to Avodah Zorah or to Shabbos, you possibly call it Kula. So how can the Shechita be kosher? As a result of that, the Rambam Pirish Nais learns we're talking about B'Shegig here. This mission here, when it says that Shchitasik Shei, talking about B'Shegig, so he's not a Mummer. Had he done it B'Mezid, he would be a Mummer. Says the Rambam, why is he a Mummer? L'chayda, when you become a Mummer, when you finish. But you Chil Shabbos is when you finish the job. But when are you shechting? When you did the Rav Simonim. So when he did the Rav Simonim, he was still yet not a Mummer. That's what the Rambam asks. And he says, that's wrong. The moment you start cutting the neck, you're ready a mummer. Or if you say, if you don't agree with me in that, at the moment you start cutting tasman hasamanim, you're ready a mummer. But tais and other shem lemefedish, you're not a mummer until you finish the job. And therefore they learn the Mishnah about Mezid. And you're not a mummer until you finish the shchita. Because Shabbos is all about melechas machshavos. You got to do a complete job. So therefore, when do you become a mechal Shabbos? When you're finished. But you becomes kosher the moment you did the raiv of the simonim. In fact, you need to understand the Rambam. Why, as soon as you cut the neck, is it because you already intended to continue, and therefore it's as if you did the whole malacha at Shabbos? But if you would have stopped right then and there, it wouldn't be chayv. Not sure the Rambam pretty much need a little explanation. But then Taisa gives another answer. If we had it before in the Gemara, but chil Shabbos depends if it's in public or in private. Maybe he did this in his house, so nobody saw. And then we don't say your mumma kol. Remember, we said only if you did it b'shuk, if you did in the marketplace. Okay. Sorry, what were you going to ask? Nothing. Okay, let's continue.
You covered it. Thank you.
Oh, I did. Okay, no problem. Let's continue. Came along Chibarav, the name of Rav, and he said, Asura ba'achila liyayma, that this meat, even though you tell me it's kosher, but you're not allowed to eat it on the day of Shabbos itself, you have to wait till after Shabbos. Now, Taisa has a whole issue. Rav Huna was a greater Amoida than Chia Barav. Why would he be saying things in the name of Chia Barav? And he goes into the whole thing, which is a little bit, learning a Taisa a little bit difficult to understand, because he's not asking Chi Barav a question. He is repeating what Chi Barav said in the name of his father, Rav. And Rav was a teacher of, and Rav Huna, I guess, wasn't privy to everything that Rav said, but Rav's son was, or much more. So, but Teshuvah has an issue with that as well. But anyway, let's continue. So then the Chaverim all said that why does Rav say that particular day of Shabbos is forbidden? Must be Rabbi Yehudi. Now, they didn't explain which Rabbi Yehuda, which Tana, what din did Rabbi Yehuda say that you cannot eat on Shabbos. So now the Gemara will go through a number of Rabbi Yehudas to work out which Rabbi Yehuda were they referring to, that on Shabbos itself, even though the shchit is kosher, but because it was done on Shabbos, you cannot eat from it until after Shabbos. Says the Gemara. Hi, Rabbi Yehuda. Which Rabbi Yehuda is it? Rabbi Yehuda the Hachani. You know which Rabbi Yehuda is? This is Rabbi Yehuda that talks about things have to be prepared before Shabbos. Otherwise, it's muktzah. Now we learned mechatchin esadeluyan. You're allowed to cut melons that were or from the gourd family that were already disconnected. They were detached from the ground. Leaf ne'abem. You're allowed to cut it up for an animal. And the esanavela. If an animal died on Shabbos proper, you're allowed to cut it up with ne'aklavim for animal food. You're allowed to cut it up. However, the Buddha says, Im loy hoisen avelim erev Shabbos. If it did not die erev Shabbos, I mean erev Shabbos is alive. When it was alive, you had no anticipation that you were going to eat it on Shabbos, so it wasn't muchen. It wasn't prepared for Shabbos. And then it died on Shabbos. You're not allowed to cut it up for your animal because it's not muchen for Shabbos. Asura, why? It wasn't prepared for Shabbos. Alma, what received from the Rabbi Yehuda? Kivin de lo itachem esmo, since it wasn't yet ready yesterday, it wasn't prepared yesterday that you're going to eat it on Shabbos. The animal's alive. Asura. Therefore, on Shabbos, even though it died, it is usher. He's hachanam here too. Even though the Yitzchak Esmael, since it wasn't prepared yesterday, because you only shechted the animal today, asura. So on Shabbos proper, you cannot eat from this animal that you shechted. Just wait till Mitzvah. Oh, 1 second. Abai says, "Me dummy." What are you comparing the case of shechting to the case of the animal that died? Hasam mi kare, a little different than you, but the idea that hasam over there is mi kare muchen la adam. It changed. While the animal's alive, what was the plan to do with an animal? Usually, it's for people, for humans. What happened was it died. Now, a human can no longer eat it, so therefore you're going to give it to the animal. So the animal changed, and the animal before Shabbos was never designated to be food for animals. So therefore for your dogs. So therefore it's muktzah. The hashta muchel klabim. A hoch over here, this animal. It was what are you going to do with the animal? You're going to shecht it. So therefore it was always ready. The question only when. It was always muhsin for a person. So why can't you eat it on Shabbos? So what's up to Rabbi Yehuda here? So the Rabbi Acha said back to him, sorry, Rabbi Abba said back to him, me savrit. So you decided that an animal while it's alive, as if it's already designated to be eaten. Me savrit behema b'chayel achilim. You think an animal, when an animal's alive, people think about an animal that's going to work in my field, it's going to plow, it's going to give me calves, milk, whatever it is. B'chayel achilim, meditating an animal while it's alive, it's the whole time ready to be eaten. While the animal's alive, you're not even thinking about eating it. You're thinking about all the benefits that you have from a living animal. So you also changed it. You changed it from being to be able to plow, and now you're going to eat it. So, of course, if you change it, even according to your vort, because you're changing it, you're not allowed to eat it on Shabbos. So Abaye counters, if you're going to tell me that's called a change, because an animal is not really meant to be eaten, right? Legadol medicine, then it's a change. So how do you become shecht an animal to be hachiv? So and how can you ever shecht an animal on Yom Tov? How can you shecht an animal on Yom Tov? You're changing the animal before Yom Tov was meant to be legadol medicine. Now you change it to food. How can you do that? I mean, you can answer what you just said. Maybe you could only shecht an animal that you prepared before Yom Tov you're going to shecht, but there's no such din. The din doesn't anyway that the animal has to be prepared before that. Oh, this animal I'm going to shecht. So therefore, so Abaye says if you're going to make that difference, then how can you shecht in Yom Tov? So the Gemara says, so Rabbi Abba said, maybe I have to explain a bit better. I don't mean an animal specifically is meant to legadol. I mean, animal could be either one. Every animal could be used for both. How do we know what your intention is? We'll see what you do with it later. And we'll use the rule of Breda. Breda means retrospective. So if you go ahead and shecht it, that means that you already always thought that this animal will be for food. If you leave it alone and you plow it, means you always thought the animal legadol so to raise other calves. If you shechted it, shows that it was meant for achila. That was over chila, and loynishchita uvra the legadle medis. And if it wasn't yishachten, then it shows that it was legadle medis. So therefore, it's not a problem with shechting an animal. It's not a problem. You Rabbi asked the question, how can you ever shecht an animal? Not a problem with shechting an animal, because when you shechted, you showed all along that's what it was for. So you didn't make a change. But Rabbi Yehuda over there by cutting. By cutting the animal that was meant to be eaten by food, when you went to the dogs, it's mamish a change. Says the Gemara. How can you say that if you're telling me that an animal while it's alive is not really meant to be eaten, and therefore it's not meant to be eaten, and therefore that's a change. That's what you're explaining. And that's why Rabbi Yehuda holds you cannot eat the animal. You've shechted the animal because you changed the animal there. And you tell me that on Yom Tov, why could you shech? Because it's like Breda. By shechting, you show that all along this animal was meant to be eaten. Then have a problem. Could Rabbi Yehuda doesn't believe in the principle of Breda? And we'll bring a raya. Rabbi Yehuda doesn't believe in the principle of Breda. So therefore, how can you learn that's the pshat? In other words, we're going to conclude that an animal is not changing. An animal is always ready to be eaten. And therefore, if you shecht it, you didn't change the status of the animal at all. And that's why you allowed to shecht on Yom Tov. And therefore, even though Rabbi Yehuda says an animal that died on its own, you cannot feed your dogs because it wasn't prepared. But an animal that was geschachten, that's what an animal is for, to be eaten. And Rabbi Yehuda would hold you allowed to eat it. So when Rabbi Barav said to his father that this Mishnah is Rabbi Yehuda, you cannot eat. You shecht an animal on Shabbos, you cannot eat it on Shabbos. That's not the Rabbi Yehuda. So which Rabbi Yehuda? We'll see in a minute. Saying Gemara said, "I'll prove it to you." But let's say Breda. He doesn't believe in Breda. Menon, how do you know? We learned this many times. Miltanya, we learned in Sukkah and other places. If somebody buys wine from Kusim, we're talking. You bought wine from Kusim, but if you buy from Nama Oretz, then the only problem is did they give Meiser? Even though Reiv Amaratza give Meiser, but some don't. So Demai. But Truma, there's no question they give Truma. But Kusim for themselves. They take care of themselves, but they don't. You cannot trust them as far as selling it. So if you buy wine from Kusin, you got to give Truma Meiser. And the problem is, it's right before Shabbos, and you have no time to set anything aside. So what do you do? This is what you do. You have 100 lugin there. You say like this: Shnei lugin, 2 lugin, shani osi lahafri, 2 lugin that I will set aside Mitzvah Shabbos, not Friday night. 2 lugin I'll set aside Mitzvah Shabbos. Hadein Truma will be the Truma. I saw the Meiser edition, and then 10 is not exactly 10 because once you take Truma is 98, but 9.8, you round it off. It'll be Meiser edition. Tisha, now you have round off roughly 9 is Meiser Sheni. When the bottom of the page is Dalam and Aleph. And then when it comes to Meiser Sheni, he's the only one you can actually do something. Everything else, you know, by Truma and all that, you have Milam Mukif, you have to separate it from right in front of you, but you don't have, the problem is right before Shabbos, you can't do it. You can't do it on Shabbos because it's like boider, you're separating, or like Masakin, you're fixing things up. Okay. But umeichel, you can with Meiser Sheni, you can say the money that I have in my house will be in exchange the kedusha of the Meiser Sheni. And v'sheisim miyad, you could drink straight away. But you didn't do anything yet. In other words, when it's going to come Motzei Shabbos, when you do it, it'll be retrospective. In other words, we believe in the principle of Yesh Bereda. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yisrael Shimon Eisen. Rabbi Yehuda asks, so what does he believe in here? He doesn't believe in Bereda. So if you don't believe in Breda, how can you shecht an animal in Yom Tov? The only way you can shecht an animal in Yom Tov is to say the animal was always suited to be geschachten. You're not changing anything.
How do you get around this? I'm still fixing up. You weren't able to drink it before you did this, and now you're able to.
Yeah, but you do right before Shabbos. Those words you do right before Shabbos, it takes a second to say it. You don't have time to physically, or you don't have kalim. So you might have him. So who said it to Breda? Possum, didn't we learn in the Gemara Sukkah and Avzon, the Tani Timer? They said to Rameh, you know why we're against it? Not because of Breda. We're against it because Shem, aren't you worried? Shem, what happens on Shabbos? The barrel breaks and you can't give the Truma Mitzvah Shabbos. Comes out of Mafreya, you drank Tevel. Right? Comes out whatever you did was Tevel. And the Truma wasn't effective and all that. That's the problem. And Rameh said, I'm not worried, which I always found difficult. Rameh is the one who's Chayshin L'miyuta. He's worried about the smallest problem. It comes over here. The Chachamim say we're worried maybe the barrel will break, which is it's a rarity. And Rameh says, no, I'm not worried about these rarities. It's like exactly the opposite of what we normally learn. Yeah, but this is the same svara. Rameh is the one who's always Chayshin L'miyuta, and over here he's not. Now Rashi says over here, which is all the Acharayim talk about, on the Daf Yudal Amud Aleph, according to Rabbi Yehuda, they say the Oisrin, right? Because maybe the barrel will break or whatever it is. So Rashi says, and what are we worried about? Shema Truma Shasa. Maybe you drank that. In other words, Rashi is saying an unbelievable chiddush. Normally when you learn Ein Breira, so what are you saying? So nothing happened. Nothing happened. Right? So there's no Truma here, there's no Maaseh, because Ein Breira. We're not going to rely after Shabbos. Rashi says, no, even if you hold Ein Breira, it's Truma. It's Meiser. Everything happened. No of us. How do you know that what you drank wasn't the part that became Truma? Rashi says, Shema Truma Shasa. That maybe you drank Truma, not that maybe you drank Tevel.
It's Truma. We know.
No. Without Rashi, you normally learn is that what's the problem? If the barrel breaks or there's no Breda, then there's no Truma. No Truma means you ate Tevel. The problem is you ate tevel. Rashi says the problem is you ate the truma part of it, which means the truma is chal. Now the problem is how do you know where? Which is a big thing in Rashi.
Isn't that a continuation from before?
If
you say les brera, then make
Then what?
that you drank.
Well, if you learn this bread, what's the normal shot? So nothing happens. Nothing happens. That means all you have is a barrel of 100 gloigen that you didn't give truma from. So you're not going to rely on later to tell me what's now. But Rashi doesn't learn that way, right? Which is a big chiddush in Rashi. Anyway, Achreim will talk about it. So that's not so. So Rabbi Yehuda maybe does agree with Breda. Ella Midatani Ayah. We had more even if he's there. What Ayah said. What did Ayah say? Ayin said, sorry, the Torah Ayah, it's the name of a big chacham. Rashi says, Rabbi Yehuda says, now this is what happens. Shabbos, I'll walk more than 2,000 amas. Now, if you want, why from the place where you're resting? So what we have, the council is Erev Chumen. Erev Chumen is, you can move the place of your primary residence somewhere else. So you put some food down before Shabbos, and it has to be there Bein Hashemashos. Afterwards, we don't care. But if Bein Hashemashos has disappeared, then you don't have a chum. What you did is, let's say you move 2,000 amas to the right, and we don't start counting till outside the perimeter of the city, 70 and 2/3 of an amma. You move, so what you did is you move your primary residence 2,000 amas over. And so that becomes your center point, and you can walk in 2,000 amas in all directions, which means that if you actually did it 2,000 amas to the right, you cannot even take one step to the left, because it's no longer, even though you're living here for Shabbos, that's not your residence. Your residence is where you put the food. Now, why are you doing that? You heard a chacham is coming to the city, so you want to be able to greet the chacham, or he's planning to stay out there somewhere in another village there, so you want to be able to go there on Shabbos. The problem is you don't know where he's coming from, the west, the east. So what do? So you put two Erev Chumen, and you say, well, I'll find out tonight in Shul which direction is coming from, and that's the one that I want to be activated retrospectively. Then there's another case. Two Chachamim are coming to town, one from the east and one from the west, and you haven't decided yet which one I want to hear. This one tells more pilpul, this one's more story. Well, if I'm tired in the morning, I'd rather go to the guy who sells stories. If I'm not so tired, I want to hear the pilpul, geschmack. So you're not going to decide till tomorrow morning, but it has to be taking effect Bein Hashemashos over Shabbos, so it's going to be retrospective. So says the Gemara here. So these are the two cases. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda says, in case number one, where only one guy is coming, and you don't know which side he's coming from, you can do what you do. You can say, put both sides, and you say, well, whichever one he's coming from, that's the one that's good. However, the two people coming, two people coming, you can't say, okay, I want, I'll decide tomorrow which one I want, which chacham I want to hear from. If in the case number one, where only one chacham is coming, you don't know which direction, that works. But but to put it on both sides and you say, well, I'll decide tomorrow which one is the effective one, because that two chacham coming, that doesn't work. So everyone tries to understand. Both of them have to apply the rule of Breda. Even if one guy is coming, right, you don't know till Friday night. So then you're going to say, oh, now that I found that, I want that side to be the isn't that Breda? Because you need your food that you put there to be your home before Shabbos starts, but you don't know till Friday night and Shul, which is already Shabbos started already. So it must be retrospective. So why does Rabbi Yehuda make a distinction between only one chacham coming? There we're going to apply Brera, it seems, but two chacham coming, we're not going to apply Brera. It doesn't make sense. Because they ain't Brera, right? It doesn't mean Brera. Rabbi Yechon answered, Ukvar bo chacham. No. You know when Rabbi Yehuda says that if only one chacham comes to town and you don't know, so you put on both sides? The chacham already came before Shabbos to wherever it is. You just don't know. So it was already sorted out before. You just don't know which side he's coming from. So we see Rabbi Yehuda doesn't believe in Breda. So going back to who's Rabbi Yehuda in the Mishnah? Rabbi Yehuda the Caleb was Rabbi Yehuda of Caleb. Now we learned in the Mishnah, Kol HaKaleb. Any keli can be moved around the Shabbos. It's not muktzah. If it's not a keli, you have a thing of muktzah machmas gufi. A rock is muktzah on Shabbos, the strictest kind of muktzah. It's not a keli. But any keli can be moved on Shabbos. But shivrein, they're shards, they broke. Need to tolen, you can move them as well. But there's a proviso. As long as it's still a keli, it still has a use. It can do something. It can still be counted as a keli. It doesn't have to be the same as the original. For example, Shivra Areva, you have a board, an eating board. You can no longer eat on it a small piece, but you can use it to cover a barrel. It still has a use. Shiva is broken glass, to cover a jug. Okay, it has a use, it's still a keli. Started out a proper keli, it still retains the law of keli, that's not muktzah on Shabbos. However, the Rabbi says, no, it's not enough. It has to continue to be effective in its original work. So, for example, Shiva Areva, lots of mikveh. This big pot that you can pour in it hot porridge, thick porridge. Or Shiva's cooking broken glass, lots of letoich and shem, and you can. It's still a keli because you can put some oil there. So what do we see from here? Only if it continue the original work and not the other one. Alma, what do you see? Since it wasn't prepared for this particular, according to Yehuda, it has to be prepared for this malacha. It's also. So here's the same thing. Hachanami over here also the case of the animal you shecht on Shabbos. Given well, it wasn't prepared yesterday. Therefore, asur it's asur. Okay, comes along a buyer. Buyer doesn't let anybody go. Especially Rabbi Yosef. Yeah, how many times, would be interesting is how many times the Shas Rabbi Yosef said something and the Abai didn't challenge it. Obviously, Robert.
Many times in Shas that mentions Rabbi Yosef and the Rashi says he was blind.
That was an Eruvin everywhere, every few pages. Rashi thinks by now we know already. Abai said, remember we looked at Rabbi Gershom, the end of the Masechet Menachos, that Rabbi Yosef did it deliberately. Abai said, me dummy. How can you compare? Over there, it started out being a keli, now it's a broken keli. It's totally different. Rabbi Yehuda makes a condition, has to be able to continue the original use somewhat. It's a new keli. It's a new. It's not the same. Therefore, us. Over here, it was when the animal was alive. What was its purpose? To be food. What do you do with it? Shechted? You can eat it. So it's not a different. It's exact same thing. The animal hasn't changed. So what do you tell me to be the whole that if you shechted on Shabbos, you're not allowed to eat it because he says no. It's not noilit. The animal is a piece. It did not change. And Yehuda holds that if it's food, is a piece, it's all right. Where do you see that? Now, the Mishnah ain't certain. You're not allowed to squeeze on Shabbos pears. Piece, a piece.
Back together again.
It means a piece. Piece, pulled apart, a piece. Excuse me. The Gemara that now we learned any cycles are paying now squeeze potatoes. Mahatayli now squeeze grapes and olives because that's what its purpose is. The main purpose of these things are mashkid. But when it comes to oranges and all those other things, so it's not the main purpose of the orange to we squeeze juice out of it. The main purpose is to eat it. So therefore, the squeezing there might be the rabban. Now, and the difference is over there. The Gemara says if it oozes out on its own. Grapes, even grape juice sitting in a plate, just by the grape sitting, you're not allowed to drink it on Shabbos because Gzeira, these are the rice. Gzeira, you can next time squeeze. But when it comes to oranges, if it sits on a plate and there's some juice there for grapefruit, orange, all these things, it's not awesome because we're not going to make a Gzeira that you might squeeze it because the whole thing's also about anyway. Okay? And then you have cucumber, these things, which not even also about either. It's totally not made for that. So the Gemara, so it's not in the Mishnah, if we're going to come in. Now it's good pay. There's lahaitim hen mashkin to extract the mashkin, it's like mefarek, separating a solid liquid from a solid. So the rabbi said, because on its own, it is usher. Rabbi Yehuda says, if the purpose of these fruits were to eat it, then a yitzim hen mutter. Then what is prepared, if a mutter. Why? Because you don't really want the juice. So we're not going to make a gzeda that next time you'll squeeze it in the chatzila. You don't want juice, you want to eat it. The imla mashkin, if the purpose was mashkin, so if you decide that this fruit you want to drink from it, then hayotzim should be us because next time you'll squeeze it on Shabbos. Squeeze it. So we see from it that so we see he doesn't believe in noilet because if he believed in noilet, then I don't care if it went on its own. And the orange, if you intended to eat it or not, anything that was born a new change should be usher. Rabbi Yehuda said it's not usher. Only a gzeda you might squeeze it where there is possible. So he doesn't believe in the idea of noiled. So we see that when it comes to food, he doesn't believe in noiled, Rabbi Yehuda, and therefore he says that the animal that according to Rabbi Yehuda, a clay shard this is noiled, but by animals it's food. Food and food is not noiled. So yes, there was alive today. Shechted, you should be able to eat it. Says the Gemara, Lav Itmar Allah, didn't we learn that Rabbi Shmuel was Moedid Chachamim, B'Salei Zeisim, but when it comes to olives and grapes, he's Moedid that even if it oozes out on its own, it's also. But Almo Kim L'Schitekaima, because what's the main purpose of grapes and olives? Squeeze it. Is Yahiv Dait automatically, it's as if the main purpose is for drinking, and we're worried that if you're going to let him to drink the juice that comes out on its own, next time you'll squeeze. So the same thing goes with an animal. Rabbi Yehuda will be made since the purpose of the animal is v'shchita. Yahiv daite. He thought about it as well that he's going to eat it.
It took us a while to get back on track.
Exactly.
We're coming back from the topic now.
So therefore, since it's as if he had it in mind to eat it on Shabbos, if you're going to allow him to eat the animal that you shechted by mistake, next time we'll shecht it deliberately on Shabbos. Next time we'll lose it. We'll go ahead and shecht. So the same gzeda you have by the juice of a grape, that if it goes out on its own, we don't want you to eat it because next time you squeeze the grape. So surely over here, especially if you learn that he did amazing, he shechted the animal, the Evid, next time we'll shecht l'chatzil. If you tell him you can eat the animal, next time he has guest Shabbos, doesn't have enough food, go shecht. Because you're allowed to eat it. And he doesn't even have to tell the people because they're allowed to eat it as well. Says the Gemara, me do a time, but what do you tell me in Ma'aser Shmuel? We're following Rav. Rav holds that doesn't agree, holds that even in the case of grapes, we don't make zedus. So the case of the animal, if since the animal is part of the food, there should be no zedus according to Rav Yehuda. You're allowed to eat it. So it goes back to the question. You Rav said name Rav that if you shechted the animal on Shabbos, you cannot eat the animal on Shabbos proper. You have to wait till Motzei Shabbos. And who is this? This is the view of Rav Yehuda. Which Rav Yehuda are you talking about? You know which Rabbi Yehuda says? So all the different cases we're talking about here is like muktzah, these kind of things. It's Rabbi Yehuda of candles, this general candlesticks, and then you have the ones made out of clay. The ones made out of clay are ugly, and there's a concept called muktzah machas miyas. Anything which is ugly, you're not going to put food in there because it's so distasteful, it's reprehensible, repulsive, and you're not going to use it. So that's called muktzah. Says Rabbi Yehuda. The Rabbi Yehuda native. We learned metaltli ner chadash. You're allowed to move a brand new candle on Shabbos. I will lo yashim, but not an old one. Why? Because muktzah machmas mias. But when it's a brand new one, and never used for oil for fire, you might put fruits in there, like a fruit bowl. But once you use it for oil and a wick, you're not going to use it to put food in there. Give it Rabbi Yehuda. So what do we see from here? He holds a council of muktzah machas mias. So therefore, the same thing with this animal. This animal before Shabbos, you couldn't do anything with it because it's aser. You're not allowed to eat the animal. It's aser. So it's muktzah machmas iser. On Friday night, you're not allowed to touch or anything else because it's muktzah machas iser because you're not allowed to shecht Shabbos. An animal while it's alive is aser. So therefore, according to you're not allowed to eat it. If you did something, it's muktzah before Shabbos. You got to wait till Motzei Shabbos. That's what we're talking about. You're confusing muktzah. You're taking muktzah machas mias and you're drawing an analogy to muktzah machmas iser. By the clay, the candlestick. Who said? Says we do the Tanya we learned. The time we learned in Mishnah, Yehuda says, he was asking, no, maybe muktzah machmas iser and muktzah machas mias are similar. And therefore, according to Yehuda, you're not allowed to eat it on Shabbos. So that's what Chibarav meant. What's the story? Rabbi Yehuda says, "Kol neder shel matchas any metal. Neir is metaltlin. You're allowed to move them around. Why? Because metal is not mias. Even if it was used, you have no problem washing it out, rinsing it out, using it for other things. Let's say made out of copper or other things. Chutz min haner, except the candle. You lit it on that Shabbos. Now, look, what's the logic? Why, if you lit it on that Shabbos? Because when you lit it, you're not allowed to move the candle about. You might extinguish it. That's called muktzah machmas iser. So we see from here clearly that muktzah machmas iser, according to Rabbi Yehuda, is aser. So the same thing here, this animal min before Shabbos was aser because it was alive. And so the Shabbos came in, it was muktzah. So now you shechted it, you shouldn't be able to eat it. Tell him again, who said? The deal, but maybe when does Rabbi Yehuda say muktzah machmas iser is an issue? You made it aser. Shine husno dachli b'daim. You use that metal piece. You use that candlestick for lighting. You lit it. You made it aser. Okay, then it's different. Then Rabbi Yehuda says you can't use it the whole Shabbos. But when the animal's alive, you didn't do anything. The animal, a living animal, is aser. So now the Gemara is stuck. We'll see tomorrow. Which Rabbi Yehuda is it that holds you shechted on Shabbos? You cannot eat it during Shabbos, only Motzei Shabbos. See you tomorrow. Have a good day.
Yeah, the candlesticks that you can't move it on Shabbos because you might not blow the candle out or put it out. So after the candle's gone out, it's still muktzah anyway, isn't it?
That's what muktzah machas Isser means. That it all, when it comes to muktzah, we look at the Bein HaShmoshes during sunset. If during sunset you couldn't move it, then even though the fire burnt out sometime in the night, it's muktzah the entire Shabbos.
Yep.
That's what it is.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.